Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022. If we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I don't know. Yeah, Taryn has some others.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mission statement of the district. We are committed to academic achievement and success for all students in a safe environment. In partnership with families and our community, our mission is to promote confidence, inspire a passion for learning, and prepare our students to become responsible global citizens. Approval of the revised agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the revised agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to discuss the validity of Don Beeler's residency at 205 Berry Road and have that item added to the agenda for this evening, please.
Okay.
You need to ask for a second, do a vote on it.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
I'd like a roll call vote, please.
Roll call. Dawn?
Yes. Yes.
Dan is yes. Jeff?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. No. No.
No.
No. Okay. So we have 4 and 4. What's the protocol?
Is Mr. Bueller signed in tonight?
What?
No. Is Mr.
I
Bueller signed in
don't
on this
know.
meeting or no? What's the procedure in the event of a tie?
We are looking into that right now.
Okay.
It's not connected to this. It's
Tie vote fails.
Okay. The comment, based on the research, is if it's a tie vote, it fails to move forward. So can I get a motion then to approve the revised agenda?
Motion. Second.
So for the record, I'd just like to make it clear that the board that gets called out on transparency is not going to be transparent to discuss the issue of the fact that we have a board member who does not reside in the district. I just want to make that clear.
We,
Well, that's a statement by you. I'm not sure that's a factual incident. In fact,
discussion, she
we
said.
It's
looked
a
into it.
discussion that
She's
I
asking for a
asked.
discussion.
You just
So
made a
again-
statement that we have a member that doesn't live in the district, and that's not a true statement.
You don't know that it's a true statement any more than I know that it's not a true statement. I asked for a
Well,
discussion
you're making
for
it as a true statement, and.
Again, the vote's taken, Anthony. I just wanted to make sure that it's clear that
Clear.
board members voted not to
It's
discuss it.
very clear.
At this time, clear.
Good.
so we had a first on that from Jamel. The second was who? Just for Taryn, because she doesn't know our voices yet?
I believe that was me.
Dan. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Next up, we have the presentation from the Orange Ulster BOCES Capital Project. So do we want to move forward with that presentation?
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm very happy to be here. I'm a former Monroe Woodbury graduate myself, so yeah, exactly. So my name is Carrie Stroka. I'm the assistant superintendent at Orange Ulster BOCES, and I have the pleasure of addressing you this evening to share with you some important information about an upcoming capital project that we will be bringing to public referendum on October 18th. So the BOCES, as you know, provides programs that we do in concert with you. We like to think of that we're not a separate entity, but in fact, we're just an arm of your district. We're kind of connected, and our students are really our students. We share them. So our intent with this project is to make sure that our facilities are still, so that our facilities can continue to provide cost-effective programs in concert with your district. It has a balance of infrastructure as well as program improvements. We want to make sure that the project that we're presenting has an economy of scale so that we can complete the project and not have to keep coming back to the district incrementally every 5 years, every 7 years. We have not done a bonded project with Orange-Ostrobothie since 1988. So it has been some time, and I suspect it will be some time after this project occurs. And finally, the other benefit to students, some of our locations have truly exceeded their expected useful life. And so it's important that we do the capital repairs to these programs so that we can deliver the educational programs in an environment that is conducive to learning. So let me tell you a little bit about our team that I have brought with us here tonight so that they will have different parts of this presentation. I have Forrest Ador with me, who's our Director of Technology. I also am joined by Kathleen Smith, who is our Director of Career and Technical Education. I'm also joined by Russ Davidson, who is the architect from KG&D. And then I'm joined with two financial advisors from our financial advisor group, and I'm joined by Karen, and I'm also joined by Melissa. So they will be presenting directly after me. Mine's kind of a short overview, and they are the women that will speak to you about the financing, which is really very important to your district. So let me give you a little timeline from the project. In 2020, much as your district is responsible to do, we had a building condition survey done, which was reviewed by our Board of Education, and it identified infrastructure work that needed to occur, as well as program improvements for the benefit of our students. In January 2022, we created a facility advisory committee that we were pleased to have several members, including Stacy, join us on that committee to talk with members of all of the component school districts, administrators as well as board members, to talk about the plans, the needs, and to give input into the committee to determine what needed to go forward. We also established focus groups within our community. So we had teachers, secretaries, custodians, technicians, classroom assistants, and administrators meet together to really talk about the needs of the facilities. And we've also conducted multiple district and board visitations, which your board and your administrative team participated in, so that you got to view the facilities while occupied by students to see the needs as well as how the programs were operating. So our timeline is ultimately going to end in an October 18th, 2022 public vote. This project will go out to the community at large to be voted upon. And to be clear, that will be all the residents that reside within our component school districts. So it will exclude those residents that live within Newburgh, because Newburgh is not a component school district within the Orange-Ostrobothie Supervisory District, but your community members will obviously be asked to vote on this project. So I'm going to talk about the infrastructure work, the major infrastructure work, and you can see on the top of this list is roof replacement. Our buildings were erected in the 70s, and as I said, our last bonded project was in 88. These roofs that are on these buildings are originals, so it's time. They need some help, and it is an important part of the project. Also, the project will include window replacement, interior doors and glazing, HVAC upgrades. The buildings have original electric, which needs to be addressed. The CTE building has the majority, the Career and Technical Education building has the majority of the electrical needs, because as you can imagine, the career and technical programs that are there rely heavily on the electrical systems, and the changes in those programs have put a greater draw on that. And then finally, an important piece of the infrastructure work that I think needs to be mentioned are secured entrances. Our two buildings on the Gibson Road campus have multiple points of entry, and people are able to enter the building while there is security there. The security is once you get inside the building. So the secured entrances, which I'll show you some schematics of, allow us to have people enter the foyer and be vetted there prior to them being able to get further into the building with the student population and the staff. So this is an overview, sky view of the Axelrod building, which is where our special education students are on Gibson Road, and you'll see in blue That section in blue is actually the secured entrance, the main entrance, which will allow for one point of entry, as I mentioned before, and then the students can divert to either side to enter the building. It will also include offices, because we are going to relocate people who are in classroom space, using it as offices, and we're going to just build a much smaller office space to free up those administrative offices for students. This is a schematic that just shows you the main floor of the special education building on Gibson Road. And this one I just think is important to see because, as you'll note, there's an awful lot of purple. And for purposes of these conceptual these schematics, the purple indicates some place that a renovation will occur. That is a space that will be touched. So anything that is purple will need to be touched, whether it's windows, doors, that those spaces need to be renovated. This is the special education building is a 3-story building, so this is the garden level, the basement, as well as the 3rd floor, and those are showing, again, the areas that will need to be touched. You'll see large gray areas on the left-hand side. Those are storage areas. Those do not need to be renovated. We're really focused on renovating classroom space where students are going to be occupying. So we'll take an overview here. This is a sky view of the Career and Technical Education Center that is also on Gibson Road. And you will notice a blue space there, and the blue indicates that that's new. Currently, almost exactly on that footprint is what we refer to as the 400 building. The 400 building is a metal structure that we currently use as classroom space. As the Career and Technical Education Center has grown, we have had to modify space that we didn't normally use for that purpose, and we have gotten it rated to be used for that purpose, but it is certainly not optimal. This new section here is considering taking down the old metal 400 building and actually erecting classrooms. This would house advanced electrical classrooms, as well as our aviation academy. And actually, we're already looking, we think we need to open another section of aviation for next year. That's become incredibly popular. We graduate a lot of private pilots. And this also solves another problem. Not only was the building dated, and it was not really the best situation and structure for students, but you had to access it from outside. So from a security standpoint, that was of great concern to us that we had students outside and accessing the building from multiple entrances. You'll see a little dog leg here at the bottom of the blue here, which shows that it actually will be connected to the main building, and students will be able to enter through the secured entrance and get access to their classroom. So that is an addition that will help improve program, as well as it will improve a safety concern that we've had for some time as well. So this is the schematic that is showing the actual outline of the CTE space. Top right-hand corner is the 2nd floor. The main portion is the main floor. Again, similar to the last drawing, anything in purple is something that has to be touched. So significant renovations need to occur at this building as well. So program-related improvements, these are not infrastructure, but instead different program-related improvements. We will be adding approximately 27 additional classrooms through the renovation at the Arden Hill campus. There's a 3rd floor in the old Arden Hill Hospital that has never been renovated. And then in addition to that, for those of us who have been here long enough to know when that was Arden Hill Hospital, the north wing, or what used to be the mental health wing, has never been touched, and that will provide additional classrooms when renovated as well. A gymnasium, we're proposing a gymnasium be erected on the site. There is no gymnasium at Arden Hill right now. And I'll show you a schematic in a second. We'll show you the location of the gymnasium, which actually was a great collaborative conversation with the facility committee from all the districts, because they asked for it to be created in a way that it would be accessible for outside groups to use that gymnasium after school hours. So that is exactly how it's been designed. The request also was that it have changing rooms and bleachers so that you could have games there after school, and that is absolutely, I think that's a terrific idea. Our gymnasiums at the other sites are used constantly for outside groups, so we expect this one will be as well. And then finally, there's a location on the Arden Hill campus that's called Building 1. That's what it's been called for a very long time with the Arden Hill Center. That was doctor's offices. The intention is to renovate that into office space for the business office and other administrative offices, because they will vacate the administrative offices on Gibson Road, And those offices will all be converted into classrooms since they're already attached to the special education building. So here's a sky view of the Arden Hill campus, where you will see the blue is the new gymnasium in the back. You can see there's parking, that it can be accessed from the outside. Obviously, it would be locked during the day. And there's a dogleg on that building as well, which connects it to the Arden Hill building itself, to the school. And the yellow boxes to the left show you the renovation of the third floor and the renovation of the north wing. And the building on the far right, which is Building 1, is the one that I mentioned that is not student space, it's office space. So we really need to vacate, and it happens to a lot of school districts. Student space all of a sudden kind of becomes office space when you have no place else, but we have to ultimately vacate that so that students can have that space back, because we do have increased enrollment in our programs, and so we need more room for the kids. So this is the schematic so that you can see the gymnasium. It is not a gymnasium where you would be holding a state tournament. This is not that large of a facility. It will not hold that many people, but it is a regulation basketball court, so you would be able to hold a basketball game there, and it will have bleacher seating, and as well as changing areas for outside groups to use, schools to use, or other community groups. I know we have a lot of you guys have a lot of soccer teams, community soccer teams, and your soccer teams use the gymnasiums a lot. So this would be another area for them to use. You'll see on the right-hand side, the first drawing with the yellow and the purple is the renovation of the third floor, and the next two square is the first and second floor of the building where the north wing, okay? So there's some site work that has to get done. Our campus on Gibson Road does not have municipal services. We have a well system and leach field, and that needs to be addressed. That's a good face, Elsie, it's true. So this is to address that. We are working with municipalities to try to connect into municipal services so that we could come in an agreement with them, but obviously some renovations need to be done to make that happen. And as always with any project, you always have paving that gets done. So here's the final cost summary. So the Gibson Road Special Education Site has a total cost of $57 million. The Gibson Road Career and Technical Education Site, that building, $67 million, and the work that would be done at Arden Hill has a $35 million cost for a total of $159 million. Our financial advisors have estimated that we're approximately 72% aidable, and they'll go into some more detail about the actual costs per district. But this, I do want us to be mindful, this $159 million, well, I will agree, is a sizable number. It is not distributed just within your school districts, it's distributed across the entire county for all the taxpayers within the county. And again, to bring back that we have not done a bonded project since 1988, and this really addresses all the needs that BOCES has to not only deal with infrastructure issues, but also gain classrooms so that we can manage the growth of the number of students that are being sent. So I'm going to introduce our two members from Bernard P. Dunnigan, who are going to really talk to you. You had gotten a presentation in advance of the meeting that have the finances, so they can speak about that. But I think what's important, I just want to say before we move forward, is that while the project itself will go out for community referendum so that all the community may vote, what is going to be before your board next meeting, or it's prior to the end of September, is that you will take a vote to determine on how you wish to finance the project. And you're going to make a decision how you wish to finance it if it passes. If it doesn't pass, you don't need to worry about it, but you still need to make a vote about how you would like to handle that financing. And our financial advisors will really be able to walk you through that. But it is important for you to recognize that you will be presented with an intermunicipal agreement to determine if you would like to fund that way or through the dormitory authority. They'll be able to speak to that more specifically. So does anybody have any questions for me? I'm really meant to be the small part of this. These ladies are the stars, so I want to make sure I give them plenty of time. Go ahead.
I got a question. I don't know if it goes to you or to
Okay.
who I consider to be the money man, Patrick.
Yeah.
So if it does fail, is there a chance for a second vote with like a smaller?
So we would have, there's nothing that prohibits a second vote, right? There's nothing that prohibits a second vote. We would just obviously go back to speak with our board to talk about what they saw as potential removals from the project. But as we've gone through the process, met with them, met with the Facility Advisory Committee that included all of the component school districts, really this was what they felt really needed to be presented. So, but that would just be a decision the board would have to make. Obviously, there are infrastructure things that have to happen. So I don't think that we would ever say, no, we're not going to come back out, because it has to get done. Roofs are not going to hang on much longer, so.
And do you have the numbers for how many Monroe Woodbury students we have in both of the programs? I don't have it in my notes in front of me, but I know we talked about that when we came to visit.
Yep, so you have approximately, past year, you had about 100 students that attended the CTE program. You have a little bit more than that attend the special education program, and you have a pretty decent enrollment in the adult education program as well. So that also uses these buildings, but just uses them at night.
Okay.
So.
So, one more
I have a
question.
question, too.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, please go.
Sure. Is any of this meant to accommodate any future growth?
Yes.
It is?
Yes. So I will tell you that, so the 26, 27 additional classrooms will accommodate growth. And one of the great pieces about those is that they're really being built to be flexible so that they can manage growth, whether it be special education or career and technical education. So, for example, you need a very specific location to learn advanced electrical. But if you're going to be Cisco certified, we can set up a computer center anywhere. So really our intention is to have not only the area for potential growth, but have it be flexible so that we can flex whether or not we need to use it for special education or CTE.
Thank you.
And we need it for swing space. Yes, I forget about the swing space, Russ. So Russ talks a lot about that when we're building, right, BOCES works, well, everybody works all 12 months, but we have kids all 12 months, and a lot of kids all of the months. So there's not kind of a respite for building during the summer. So what will have to happen is new space will have to be built out so that we can shift students from one program over there while we're renovating or rebuilding where they were. So that is a big part from a logistics standpoint that will be important to have it for that space. And then we'll use it after that.
So when we go over the finance portion, will you have a period of time, maybe the last 5 years, the number of students who've gone through from our district?
I can get them for you, absolutely. Yep, I can send them to you,
Great.
absolutely.
Well, I have a couple of questions, but building on that last one, so to Mrs. McCleary's question about how many students, so would this additional 14.6 million in classroom space allow us to send additional students?
Absolutely,
Obviously?
yeah, yeah.
Are you going to have those numbers at some point as to how many additional opportunities there will be in the two programs?
Well, we will build them based upon where, so, for example, currently, our largest growing programs in CTE are heavy equipment, so the construction trades, animal science, and the Health Careers Academy, which makes sense based upon today's job market. So as we have more requests for those students, we increase the number of classrooms in those programs. We used to have a very, very large number in our horticulture program, and that has diminished significantly. So we've removed space from that and given it to somebody else. So it's really about responding to whatever people ask for. And wherever the greatest need is, then that's where we will add the classrooms. And then as that retracts, we will then retract that space. And it's very similar to special education. Years ago, school districts used to send us special education students that were in classrooms that were called 12-1-1s, 12 students, 1 teacher, 1 assistant. We used to have classrooms that had those students there. Now, those students are with you, and we've had to increase different kinds of classrooms in the special education space. So it's really just to be responsive to whatever you ask for, and that's kind of our job.
And then just with respect to the election that you talked about, who's responsible for that election?
So
Mark?
our district clerk will be coordinating that, and she will be responsible for ensuring that there are individuals to man the polls.
So that takes place in BOCES?
So, nope, so our intention in discussion with the superintendents and in discussion with the Facility Advisory Committee is that there will be a location, at least one location per district for the vote. But the interesting thing about BOCES voting, which is different than a school district voting, is that you could vote at any of the locations. We are required to maintain documentation to ensure that there are no duplicate votes. But if Patrick happened to be over at a meeting in Chester, you could vote at the Chester location that day. You do not have to vote it because they consider the voting district BOCES and not by your community.
So the expense of that election is on BOCES?
Yep, we're taking care of the election.
And what percentage of the component districts do you need in order to pass?
There is no percentage, it's just a community vote. So as long as the vote passes, the vote passes. It's not by district.
Oh, it's just.
It's just
all.
everybody votes. And if there's enough votes, then it passes. And if it, you could have very large support in Monroe and then not support someplace else. And while Monroe may support it, it may not pass
So
someplace
it's a
else.
majority vote.
It's a majority
And if it
vote, and it
fails?
is BOCES district.
And if it fails, what's the next step? Are you going to reintroduce it at a reduced?
So we would go back to the board. As I had said earlier, we would go back to our cooperative board and ask them what pieces they would like to cull off and then, and talk about reintroducing it, coming back. So, because again, the infrastructure work, I believe all of it based upon the feedback that we've received and the building condition surveys has to be done. But certainly, there are always things that are no different than your buildings. There are things that are more severe than others.
Right.
But again, I don't know when the last time Monroe did a capital project, but again, having not done a bonded project since 1988, in BOCES, I think it's.
It's just difficult to get people to come out and vote on a school budget, so to come out to vote for a
Totally
BOCES
agree.
capital project.
We understand, yeah. I hear you. It is hard to get people to come out and vote.
Can I just go back to
Sure,
the
Stacey.
numbers question?
Sure.
Because again, we get asked this a lot as board members, and
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but there's usually a wait list for our students to be able to attend BOCES. So will you, with this project, be able to, let's say, come to each of the component districts, including ours, and say, we are now able to offer you 20 more spots, 30 more spots, whatever that program might be?
Right.
I understand that you're saying
no, I hear
the
you,
fluctuation of the
Stacey.
programs.
Yep.
But will we as a district be able to offer that to more of our students that are requesting it?
So the intention is to not have wait lists. Yes,
Right.
that's our goal, is to ultimately not have wait lists. So yes, will this project expand the number of seats that exist in CTE? Absolutely. That is the intention, is to add space after we use it as swing space. But then it will ultimately be space that will recapture as classroom space. And again, trying to be mindful of where the trends are right now. We actually work with the Department of Labor to, in addition to what the children are requesting to come into, it tends to really follow what the job market's showing us. So, construction trades, very big right now with our students.
So if the project is approved,
Yep,
once the work begins?
Yep.
How long a period of time?
I'm going to let Russ answer that, because I'm not
Okay.
exactly sure how long you think.
It's a lengthy project.
It looks lengthy,
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking.
It's going to
For you.
be probably 3 years from the vote date before you're going to see 90% of those facilities come on, because we have to go through the design, the SCD permitting process. We have to build the new spaces so we can shift students to there, so we can renovate all those purple areas. So you're really not going to see the added capacity until about 3 years from now. And that's why Kerry pointed out that spaces are going to be designed to be flexible. Because even when we did Arden Hill, there was a much bigger adult ed component that became, by the time it was done, a lot of it special.
Special education.
So we like to use this phrase, loose fit, long life. If you design things to be flexible, they will last forever. And that's why their facilities have lasted since 1969, and we want to keep that going forward. But I would just add that this, we do a lot of work for school districts. This is not, this doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles. This is a lot of HVAC, security. There's $23 million of energy-related improvements, which will lower operating costs. This is nuts and bolts. It's just 600,000 square feet of facilities that BOCES has. And 80% of this money is at the Gibson Road campus, which hasn't seen a capital project in 36 years.
Thank you.
And I know there's a financial presentation following, but just, there's options available for funding, and I'm sure that, Mr. Cahill will speak to the board about those, but there's definitely implications and impact on our taxpayers, right? On the different scenarios that are going to be offered.
Right, and that will be really something that Patrick will be able to speak to, because I can't
Right.
really speak exactly to how Monroe Woodbury would choose to.
Well, typically, I mean,
Yeah,
there's going to be
yeah,
an
of course,
impact to
of course.
taxpayers.
Right,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely. Okay.
Probably last question,
You
sorry.
got it, no problem.
Keep you up During the 3 years until it's fully done, is there going to be a loss of seats in any term? I think you called it swing space?
Yeah, swing space.
Will that definitely be able to take on all the current students that we currently have?
Yeah, that our intention is to not have, our intention is not to turn away students. We're going to just have to be flexible in moving, and they might have a new location for X period of time while their space is being renovated, so it's new for them. But we will keep moving, you know, we're not losing operation.
Great.
Which is why it's just a very unique project to manage.
Thank you.
You got it, no problem. All right, come on up, guys, you're up. You got it first.
a hard copy for you as well.
I have one.
You have one?
Yeah, thanks. I'm good. Thank you.
Nope.
I have the digital. Thank you.
Don't say that too loud here. We're not allowed to have paper. Bargov doesn't let us.
I got the digital one. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know I can see this on our agenda, but can the public see this? Or will it be uploaded after today's meeting?
Yeah, they can see it because we
Okay.
made sure that it's facing this up here so they can see it.
But I mean in
yes.
Word docs?
We will be able to upload later.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So thank you for having us. As Carrie had said, we're the BOCES Municipal Advisors. And we've worked with them with the scope that they presented and the cost, and kind of gone through, like she said, you have to have a BOCES-wide vote to have the project approved, but the BOCES also has an option, two options of how you can have the financing authorized, which is what Carrie was talking about originally. The two options is to go through an intermunicipal agreement, versus going through a DASNY financing. So in our presentation, as we're talking about, we are presenting information on how an intermunicipal agreement would work. I could call it an IMA. I might end up saying that, so I'm going to say IMA. It's a little bit easier. As an IMA, I'm sorry. As an IMA, and the reason is we're going through to show you this option of the IMA route is that it's actually the most flexibility for every component in the BOCES on how they want to finance it. So it gives the BOCES components their options of, do they do short-term financing, do they pay cash, do they go to bonds, which then helps them determine in their own financial standing how it impacts them on a yearly basis, so that you have more control of the impact to your taxpayers based on the way you finance it. And with that flexibility, because you can then finance on your own, versus DASNY, you'd be paying lower interest rates. If we did the financing through DASNY, that's a higher interest rate there, as well as a DASNY financing would be that the cost of the project would go up a little bit higher, because there are DASNY issuance cost fees that go into it if we were to go through DASNY.
And what does DASNY mean, please?
Good question, sorry. Dorm Authority of the State of New York. So the state has, it's like an IDA, you know how you heard the IDAs and all that? That's what the DASNY is. It's an arm of the state of New York, and it allows for not only BOCES, but even component school districts to do borrowings through that way. And actually, from a BOCES standpoint, BOCES, as you know, is all, the components is all part of the BOCES. And so that the BOCES itself can't physically do a bonding like you would do as a school district. So they get all their financing from the components, and/or they can issue just through the DASNY. But any of the issuance through the DASNY, those payments are actually split between the components and paid back by the components. So the impact on the DASNY would still be your share of the project. So, but like I said, the flexibility of the IMA allows for you to work with your financial structure and how you would like to do that. So, that little intro. So, as Carrie went over, that the project cost of the scope of work that went over, overall, it's about the $159 million. That $159 million is then broken down by each of your components. And as you can see, it's broken down by your Arwada percentage through the BOCES. And Monroe Woodbury's share of that would equate to about $21.9 million of that $150 million. You as a district will get BOCES aid back on that at your BOCES R-rated ratio. So the aid back on that, your share of the project will will reduce the amount of the local share to your local taxpayers. Yep. So the project overall, the $159 million, as we were discussing, someone had a great question on timing of how long it's going to take. In order of flexibility and help you minimize any impact to your taxpayers, we viewed it with the architect and the BOCES looking at a cash flow. You would look at all your other projects, is timing of when might they need those payments in order to pay for the construction and all that. So there's a 3-payment structure for every component broken out that you'll have to make. The first one is estimated in July of '23. You'd make your second in July of '24 and your third in July of '25. Those payments are based on the amount of money that would be needed for the construction over those 3 years. And so that, as you can see, your component share of the $21.8 million, $9 million, your first payment would be made up of a little over $11 million, $9 million for the next payment, and $1.6 million for the third payment to get you to your total. And this is how it's broken out for all the components, based on their share and like that. So as we get further, Melissa's going to talk a little bit about what we talked about the options. So in a BOCES project, unlike a standard school district capital project, like I mentioned, you get BOCES RWADA aid back against whatever payments you make to the BOCES. So if you made an $11 million cash payment to the BOCES, you'd get your aid back the same year you make that $11 million cash payment back to the BOCES. If you did some borrowing, some cash and some borrowing, you get aided on the debt service payments you had made versus the cash payments you made. So in this analysis, we're showing a couple of the options that you could go forward with because of the IMA. That would be something, though, that you would want to speak closely with your own municipal advisor and the business officials to make sure how can we do this to lessen the impact to the taxpayers. Any questions on that before we go into the options? Again,
I just want to clarify something. Maybe it's better for Mr. Cahill. So basically, just to talk about her statement about the BOCES aid, would it impact our taxpayers if we were to receive BOCES aid back? Would it mitigate some of that taxpayer?
I think it would mitigate the cost.
But they would feel.
Based on your estimate, we would be getting about 44% back. So in other words, a portion of the capital work would not be fully aidable. 72% would be aidable. And then our BOCES aid ratio is approximately 61%. So the weighted return or aid ratio is about 44%. So there would be a local share.
Right.
And I think you'll get into that if let's say we finance for 15 or 20 years, it's around $945,000 annually at 20 years, I think, at 4% interest rate.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things that are estimates there and can change, but it definitely, it's where we stand right now, that would be like 0.5 percentage point on our budget, a budget-to-budget increase of 0.5 percentage point. So if our budget goes up 2.5% or 3%, 0.5% would be attributable to this, in going forward in the future.
Right, but I think it's important to let the taxpayers know what pieces are going towards what, right?
Sure, of course.
How did you come to the calculations for share per district? How was that determined?
That's that RWADA percentage of your RWADA share at the BOCES. So if you go to the page before, so in column.
Can I just say what it means?
Yes, thank you.
Resident weighted average daily
Attendance.
attendance. So it's the same way that your administrative share of the BOCES budget is calculated. It's a state calculation of what is the the number of students approximately.
Who attend the programs?
No, that attend Monroe.
enrolled in
So it's just based on the volume for our district, not necessarily the number of students who attend
Correct.
programs within the BOCES.
Our WADA is a state number, and it is intended to have larger districts pay larger share and smaller districts pay smaller share, regardless of participation.
Right.
Do you know what the participation rate is for Monroe Woodbury?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can send it to you, absolutely.
So based on the RWADA, it's 21-22 RWADA percentage, your Monroe Woodbury is 13.69% of that over $159 million.
So, sorry, excuse me.
No, go ahead.
Based on that question, so judging by those numbers, KJ has 119 children?
Yeah, because they're only public school students are the students that attend the special needs school. That is their only public school, so it's based on
Okay.
public school students. Your RWADA does not include private
Right.
religious schools.
Thank you for clarity.
You got it.
Okay.
So, as Karen was saying, that we'll take a look at a couple of the options just to give you an idea of what it could look like and how it could impact your district. And like we had mentioned, to work closely with the business office as well as your own municipal advisor to see how, you could kind of work this into your overall tax cap, tax levy, and overall local share as it stands. And budgeting tool. So the first option that we'll look at here is what if the district were to pay cash for each of those 3 payments that we were looking at for July of 2023, 24, and 25 there. So then starting with the left-hand side, that first green flag there shows you on July 15th of 2023, the district would make a payment to the BOCES of that $11.2 million. Later on, that same fiscal year in 23-24, towards the end of that year, closer to June 30th of 24, that purple flag just to the right there shows you the potential BOCES aid repayment based on that $11.2 million of a contribution. So that $4.9 million of the aid that could be received based on that payment takes into account the district's RWADA as well as the bond percentage or aidability factor for the estimated project here. So it kind of goes through this kind of cash scenario for each of the 3 payments. So essentially you're making a payment to the BOCES, a cash payment to the BOCES at the beginning of your fiscal year. And then towards the end of the year, as you'd get a reimbursement back based on that payment, the aid back for that. So for example, for the second year, so July 15th of 24, your second payment is just over $9 million. And then June 30th of 2025, the potential aid repayment there is just under $4 million. And then 25, 26 is potentially the last fiscal year for any payments based on this structure, just doing the cash. And then from here, so based on this financial picture, we'll look at what it does to the overall local share if you were to do that. So flipping to the next page. So column A shows you starting in the 23-24 fiscal year there, that $11.2 million of a cash contribution. So column B and C and D with the debt service are all zeros right now because we're assuming just cash being paid. Column E there is filled in with the estimated BOCES RWADA aid based on your RWADA percentage, your current RWADA, as well as the estimated bond percentage. So that $4.9 million in that first year with the resulting local share in column F, that $6.2 million for that first year potentially based on that math. And then kind of going forward in 2025, so you have your second payment there, the $9 million, with that $3.9 million of aid back in column E, with about $5 million for the local share there. And then the third payment is significantly less, so then the local share kind of drops off at that point. And then by the time you get back to the 26-27 fiscal year, you'll see zeros kind of going forward from there. So this one kind of just matches along with the timing of the project. It's a higher impact initially there, but so it could do some sort of combination of this along with some of the financing ones we'll touch on next. Does anyone have any questions about this option before we move on? All right, so the second option that we were kind of taking a look at and hypothetical. So then we took a look at what if the district were to issue short-term financings for each of the payments. Didn't have the cash flow to contribute the initial cash, right on July 15th. So you do a short-term financing. So this one's set up to do maybe a June of 23 to a June of 24 bond anticipation note. So a 1-year temporary financing there for that first payment. And then we're essentially doing 3 different short-term financings, which allows for the district to kind of leverage any aid that could be received potentially for this project, without having to, depending on your cash situation, having to be cash strapped for the year or so forth by doing that larger contribution with just your own funds. So same sort of concept, we kind of go through the 3 different short-term financings, and then by the time you get to the end of June of 2026, that your financing and your contributions would be complete at that point, and then 0 payments kind of going forward. So, do you have anything?
I was just to say, just what this option sort of says is that you do the short-term financing, you get your BOCES aid in, and then you basically have the cash of their local share piece that you'd pay off the note with. So, so if you didn't have 11 million up front, you borrow it, you get your 5 million in, and then if your local share was the 9 million of it, then you'd pay that off with a note, and you do that on each payment. And that's just what this option is. Again, kind of that flexibility if you had cash available to pay your local share piece of it after the BOCES aid came in.
So the next page here just shows you a hypothetical financial plan of how that would work there. So then column A now, the cash contribution is 0, and now we're actually doing the issuance there for the short-term financings and then the notes. So it works in a similar fashion where you're kind of paying off, you're issuing the financings and then kind of paying it off. The differential between the first option for all cash for the 3 payments and then the financing for the 3 payments is just a little additional interest expense that the district would incur in order to kind of do that. So, but it could allow for more flexibility cash-wise if it's needed throughout the year there. So you kind of get to a similar sort of local share for the same 3 years, same 3 fiscal years there by the time you get to column F. So about $6.5 million initially, and then $5.2 million in 2025, and then it drops down to $941,000, and then down to 0 from there. So then this is still matching up to the projected timing of the project from there. Any questions on this before we move forward?
Does the RWADA aid go up because interest is included in it?
You'll get aided on that interest.
You do, okay.
Right.
Yes.
So
Against the aidable, at the aidable 72%.
Right.
Yes.
Do we know if the 4% is a current rate because of rising interest rates?
I would defer to
We
our
are
fiscal
seeing
experts.
notes right now, so that should still be a little, again, we're a conservative municipal advisory firm as well. And that 4 right now on current rates is a little bit higher than current, but current have been coming up,
Yeah.
they're in the 2s right now.
In the high 2s right now, like
Okay.
2.8,
Yes.
close to 3% as of, in today's market.
So there's some cushion in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the last option we'll kind of take a look at tonight is, what if the district were to do a couple temporary financings initially as the project was getting started, and then once the construction and the project was, nearing completion for the BOCES project, then you would look at potentially issuing a permanent financing, going to a serial bond to stretch out the payments even a little bit further based on the cash flow for the district there. So what we're showing on here is that same first payment that's due, the $11.2 million in July of 2023. We're doing the temporary financing, the bond anticipation note there from June of 23 to 24, kind of making a principal payment there to pay down a little portion of that based on some aid that's received, kind of renewing that note, that following year, picking up the next payment that's due to BOCES, that $9 million piece within that temporary financing, so that would come due in June of 2025. And then potentially looking at going to issue a serial bond for the project, for your share there for, in June of 25 we're showing a 20-year payback, but it could be, whatever, any determination up to the 30 years.
Right. So unlike a component of your own borrowings and the way the aid works on that, you're restricted to an assumed amortization period at an assumed interest rate as a school district. For the BOCES, it's the way they used to pay aid, it's the old way I always say, is you're paid, like I said, based on the debt service payments you make, and you can borrow, that's why you could do 3 notes, you could do a bond for 5 years, you could do a bond for 10 years, you could do a bond for 15 or 20 years, up to the 30-year maximum PPU, period of probable usefulness, that you can do. But we're just giving an example of going 20 years on a bond. And again, this option is basically saying it's allowing you to make smaller, decrease the amount of the local share each year to have to pay back.
Right, so then the last page here within this presentation here kind of takes a look at that, and we were kind of touching on that initially there. So then we've kind of worked it so that hypothetically that we have in column B there, the potential principal payment payback. So at the bottom of that, so starting in 2024, that $1.2 million of principal and kind of going there forward, maybe final payment comes in 2043 based on that, and you'll see the total of column B there is your $21.8 million share. The related potential estimated interest expense based on those financings, the temporary financing, as well as the serial bond there in column C. Total debt service in column D, 1.6, almost $1.7 million, with the estimated BOCES Arwada aid in column E is a $740,000 on an average annual basis to get to that $945,000 potentially local share annually if you kind of stretch it out like this, and if all holds true based on the estimates and projections shown.
So I
Just to kinda-
have a question with that. If we did a 20-year bond, what's the likelihood that BOCES is going to come back in that time period and need more money, since this is really more infrastructure right now? I'm going to think in a 20-year time period, there's going to need to be more financing for other projects.
Well, I don't know, I can't answer that question where they're going, but I can talk about the length of term. This is, like I said, these are options. This is,
Yes.
you could have gone 10 years.
Okay.
So that would probably become questions if they say, yeah, we might come back, and maybe you might say 10 years, I don't know. And maybe that's when you might want to work to structure the bond shorter if it fits in financially.
Okay.
So that's a good question, because you would be, once you're into that bond, but that also is why we said maybe the option with this, before you go right to bonds, don't go right to bonds. Do some short-term notes. You need to do a bond for 7 years.
Okay.
Of that piece of the local share.
Thank you.
Do we need voter approval for if bonding process, as if we were doing a capital project within our own district?
No.
Once the board decides on what method of financing, payment, et cetera, then it's, as long as the vote passes, the BOCES, countywide vote, then
Yes.
our choice is good.
Yes, so basically, once if you've agreed and say, yeah, we want to go the intermunicipal agreement route, as a board, and all the component districts agree to go the intermunicipal agreement route, then you would be, then you'd have the voter-eyed vote, and if that passes, there would be some bond resolution that each individual district board will have to adopt prior to even being able to issue financing. But yes, you would not have to go back to your voters to get approval to do the borrowings, because the BOCES-wide vote gives you that authority to do that.
So do we know what the cost differential is to go the DASNY route? Because I believe what I understand about that is you would actually procure the financing for all of the districts and then divvy it out.
Right.
So,
Right. So the way the DASNY works is that, you're right, so you'd still have your share, based on those Arwadas, but it would be based on the debt service payments that the BOCES would be paying, well, actually, you guys would be paying to the BOCES through the budgeting to DASNY. And that fee is a little over $1 million.
I think we were originally, it was a couple $1 million or so that would get added in to the overall project costs.
Right.
On top of what's already been presented at the overall $159 million. So it would be additional couple $1 million for that type of financing to add in. And that financing also limits each of the components, individual components, structure-wise. The BOCES could pick any term, that made sense. And then you'd kind of be locked into paying your share of whatever that debt service is.
so the 1 to 2 million would be spread across all the districts?
I'm going to just interject only because we can get back with you with the exact number for the DASNY,
Yes.
because I'll tell you why. The part of the reason you vote on the intermunicipal agreement, yes or yay or nay, by September, is that the estimates that we have is that it would increase the project cost by almost $8 million. So So that would be the additional cost from the DASNY. So instead of going to the public with a $159 million project, we would go with $167 million. That's why we have to know what way the districts want to finance, because we have to put up the proper amount of money before the voters, so that we can have authorization to expend that amount of money. So we can find out the exact dollar amount, but I do know that, that they have calculated it. I know Jason had shared it with me, so I think he can, and if he hasn't shared it with you, Patrick, we can get it to you, of the exact DASNY portion of
Yes.
the fees that would go to Monroe Woodbury.
Yeah, that would be important for us.
Same project.
That would be important for us to understand, because just in the last page, the differential with the financing cost is $6.4 million more if we went with that option. I understand we have other options.
Right.
So if it's $8 million more across all districts, it could be a much more cost-effective way to go. And it's my understanding it's less on the districts themselves from an overhead standpoint to have to go out and get the financing, because it's done centrally. So that would be a consideration I think we would want to take a look at.
But do all the districts have to vote to agree to that? So it would have to be the majority of the component school districts to agree to use it?
All the districts need, in order for us to use an intermunicipal agreement, it has to be unanimous by the
Right.
boards in the county.
So it would have to be,
If one district says no to the IMA, everybody's DASNY.
got it.
Right.
And
You have to pay
And
more.
you, right.
that's how it
And
works.
back to my first comment, not only pay more into the project cost and pay out, the borrowing rate will be higher.
Will be higher.
For DASNY. So we're estimating this is a 20-year at a 5%, DASNY could be close to a 6%.
Okay.
Because DASNY runs, you pay a little bit more through the,
But you'll provide us that information.
We'll get you that exact data from Monroe.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
Without knowing what kind of assistance we'll get from the state, are we allowed to make additional principal payments if necessary? Or is it the payments are the payments?
So against whatever you borrow? Or, okay, so,
Well, as to say, for example, the last page, every year was $944,000. We wanted to make, we got additional aid, and we were able to put it towards this. Is that possible?
once you permanently finance your share, the only time you'd be able to make any additional money or pay it off is if it's callable. So once you're locked into a permanent financing, so see column B,
Yep.
that's the principal payments that estimated to be making. So if you wanted to make a higher principal payment, you couldn't once you permanently financed.
But we could set them up as callable.
It's callable, but again, it's usually an 8-year call.
Yes.
So you'd have to wait 8 years to either, refinance it or call it in full or pay off some
Partial,
maturities or
right.
partial call. So, yeah. Yeah. So doing like short-term borrowing at first, and if you think over the next couple of years you had money, that way you could then downsize what you're paying back before you go to bonds as well.
Might be a question for Patrick. Do we have a general idea of which one might be a less tax burden?
In terms of this,
Yeah, in terms
the
of-
scenarios, well, I would just say that the first two would be difficult, right? To come up with 20, like all cash means $22 million in 3 years, approximately. So that's not really very realistic, I think. Probably for most districts.
Good.
It's not realistic. It's like paying for your house with all cash.
Sure.
It's hard to do. I think realistically, probably the third option, where we would have to issue serial bonds ourselves, is probably the most likely option. It's just the way it is. I had a question, and I think I know the answer. As a district, we're not permitted to use our capital reserve for the payment, a cash payment to
My
BOCES.
understanding is, first of all, you would probably check with your local attorney who wrote it, depending on how it was written. Most capital reserve propositions are written just for your own buildings. You couldn't use it, have the voters approve you to use it for BOCES.
And normally voter authorization is required, so I don't think the BOCES
You would need
district
voting.
provides that authorization to
No,
us.
you
but-
would have to have your own vote to ask your voters, if you could even use it for a BOCES.
Yeah, I don't think we could, but.
So then, understanding what you had just said earlier, if one school district doesn't opt for what you're proposing here, it goes DASNY anyway.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes.
And I don't know if this question it's really not for you guys, it's more directed to Patrick, and I don't want to say that it's premature, because now I'm finding out tonight that we have to make a decision on at least the financing component by September, but how does this impact our Monroe Woodbury capital project that we have slated? So,
It's a really good question. It's one that we've been thinking about as well. We were intending to do an authorization on December 6th ourselves. And so this certainly will confuse the voters potentially, might, sort of muddy the waters for us personally. So I can't really say, Stacy, for sure what the outcome would be or how it would impact us. But I would say it's not great to be doing these two things at the same time or 6 weeks, after the BOCES. And I wasn't even sure when you folks were doing it. I heard you say mid-October, correct? The 18th, yeah. So, so it's something, it's a concern, it's something for us to think about, for sure.
If this does pass, we're locked in. We have to contribute our share.
Yes.
Right.
Now, if it doesn't
One way or the
pass,
other.
what's the revote date?
We haven't established it.
Okay.
But
Just-
we would certainly, we recognize that we knew when your vote was in December, and we did not pose to have ours in December for that exact reason, because we didn't want to.
Are we still December, Patrick? Is that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael, can I just ask?
please?
So I know this isn't something probably you guys have, maybe you've thought about it. Was there any consideration of two propositions? So a sort of a priority one proposition, school districts do this often, and I know it's mostly nuts and bolts. Sounds like it's a lot of necessary things, but did you give that any consideration?
That was discussed at the board level, and at the facility level, and the decision was made to go with one.
All in?
Yep, all in.
How
For
come?
the economy of scale, and because of the percentage of it that's actually infrastructure, because of original stuff, right? Original roofs, original electric, original HVAC, because of that amount, that to cull off the other pieces, the group did not feel that that was the best way to go. And because I think also the duration since the last time that actually had been done, that the facilities on Gibson Road had been touched.
Do you have a sense if it goes the DASNY route, what the term would be of the borrowing? Would it be 20 years or?
It can be
I think Deborah would be the one that would be
Okay.
the best one to answer that question.
Because usually if you're doing some new construction, that's normally 30 years, right? So,
Yeah, a very small portion of this is new construction,
right, I get it,
so it probably weighs probably closer to
20. Yep. Okay, thank you.
And can you just clarify, are we taking basically 2 votes before September? 1, to support as a board, whether we're even putting this to our voters, and then 2, if we are going ahead with which finance option that we're doing. So that's,
So there's just, you have one vote, you have to vote on the financing option. You have to vote if you wish to enter into an intermunicipal agreement.
Okay.
That's the only vote you have to make as a board.
Yep.
You do not need to vote as to whether or not this goes to vote. It is going to vote in October. You need to vote on how, if the popular vote is to pass, how your district was interested in financing.
okay.
Yes.
You don't
We
have
had
to vote-
discussed that at one point at one of the meetings, but I think it was that we either put it to the voters or we did a board vote.
Right.
But I think what happened was that if we did strictly a board vote, which meant that the component school districts, it wouldn't go to the taxpayers, it would only be the component boards that were voting. But correct me if I'm wrong, in order to do that, everything had to be unanimous.
And it had to be, in fact, correct me, Russ, but I don't think there could be new construction. I think
Correct.
because there's
Right,
new
yeah.
construction-
There were
Correct.
things
If
with
there's
it.
new construction,
Correct.
It
Okay.
has to go to a popular
Yes.
vote. It cannot be
Yes.
voted on just by boards.
Yes.
Yeah, BOCES have a challenging way of financing capital projects. Local school districts, you have a much easier pathway. And almost all BOCES that I know of have done the countywide vote with the IMA, because that's the lowest cost to the taxpayer.
Who's going to be doing all the public awareness about what's happening in the proposal? And
That's us.
you're going to mail our,
Yes, we will.
District-
We are going to provide the communications to all of the residents within the area, and that's our responsibility.
but you'll work,
Links on your website.
Yeah, we'll give you all the
Right.
press material, and then we'll obviously manage print.
right. But prior to that, there'll be a discussion with the districts to see how it's being presented to their own taxpayers?
So, it's going to be presented in one way, not to all the taxpayers of the BOCES, and I'm sure, obviously.
No, I understand. I'm just saying input from the different component districts as to what you're putting out to our
It will
taxpayers.
certainly be shared with you, absolutely.
Are there any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where's Karen?
You just need to get back on camera, right?
Yeah,
Zoom.
don't, they're going to do something right now. Zoom us out. Zoom us. She's zooming out. Prudence, Prudence, Prudence. Are you zooming us? Okay,
Okay.
thank
Okay.
you.
We're up to item 6 on the agenda, questions or comments from interested citizens. I was notified we provided. Approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
Motion.
Second.
Mel and Dan, all in favor?
Aye.
Oop, should have did that.
I did
I
second.
ended the meeting early. Approval of a textbook. Does anyone have any questions before I put it up for a vote?
This is a new class that's being offered, Doc?
Yep, this is a college African-American history class. It's an elective course. The textbook is African-American history, which is actually, we call it a textbook because it goes under the category of textbooks. However, it's actually a workbook that goes along with our American history textbook, which is used for all U.S. history classes for 11th grade up at the high school. But it is a new elective course for this current year, correct?
So it's a one-shot, one-use.
Well, no, this, even though it's considered a textbook, it's not going to be used as a consumable.
Okay.
We're only buying one class set of the books, but you get the 6-year digital license. It's the digital online component that the students will be using.
Okay.
So it's a one-time purchase. It's not an annual,
Well, when you say workbook, I just assume kids
Yeah,
writing and everything.
yeah, I mean, technically, I say workbook because, it sort of falls under the category of, what we would typically consider to be a workbook, but we still have to call it officially a textbook. It's a supplemental book that goes along with.
But since we have the digital license, we're able to take advantage of it for the 6
Correct.
years and offer the course under the same
Correct.
book for that.
Which is basically what we do with all of our textbooks. We usually buy, even when the board approved the American history textbook that this is aligned to.
Right.
We bought, you buy a class set of books, but all students have access to the online digital version of it to be used on their devices. Correct.
Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Jamel and Suzanne, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Opposed? Thank you. Second reading of the policy manual. Can I have a motion to approve the second reading?
Motion?
Dan, Jamel, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Opposed? Approval of the Board of Education committees.
Like a discussion.
I'm sorry?
It was asked at the last meeting that we discussed it. Mr. Anderson asked at the last meeting, which was why we didn't approve it, was there needed to be discussion.
Oh, on the
So we
committees.
hadn't
yes.
approved it, yeah.
Yes,
Okay. Is there a discussion on it tonight?
yes, please.
Sure.
I've been on the board for 9 years, and during that 9-year time, I have never been added to or removed from a committee without a prior conversation until now. I'd like to know what has changed.
I haven't had a discussion with anybody regarding the removal from my positions as well, and I'm unable to accept the delegate position,
The which position?
the Orange County School Board Association delegate position.
Okay. Based on what I was told and what I understood, it's the president's role to look at the committee listing and post the assignments to that.
Yeah, but prior practice has been to have a conversation.
But I have not been prior board president, so.
You were in the working session where we discussed the previous committees that we had openly discussed for the upcoming year. Prior to you being the president, you were part of a discussion where we discussed the committees. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, that statement, I'm going to take a little exception to it. We've never, and I've been on the board for 8 years, we've never had a meeting where we discussed every committee and every position.
No one has ever called you and said,
That may be
what are
true.
your
I'm not
interests?
saying that
Where
what you
would
said
you
isn't
like,
true.
what are your
What she
interests?
said,
Where
I'm
would you like to
taking
be?
exception to.
But this year, we did do that. We
No,
discussed
we
it
did
in a
not.
working session.
did.
We
At a
did not
working
go
session.
through every committee and every position on the committee, never.
Okay.
I mean, there have some discussion about committees from time to time in some of our meetings. We've never sat there and went through every committee and said, this is now the chairperson, this is the people on it. It's just not the way it's gone.
So to be clear,
Previous presidents have done it that way, where they've, at least to Suzanne's point, extended the phone call conversation. Was there a phone call conversation to any of the other members that are sitting here about their assigned roles?
That I'm not talking about.
I'm asking, were you asked to be the committee chairperson for your role? I'm asking that question, if you were
Yes,
consulted.
I was
You were.
asked.
Okay.
Well, that
Dan, were you
courtesy was not
consulted for
extended
your
to me.
position?
Typically, I'm never consulted. I was asked once by Mr. Hubert to step aside, that Dawn could take over on the Facilities Committee. When she was elected, I did, and there was a problem when we had the Annexation Committee, where Suzanne had been president, I believe, and they were going to ask me to run it, and Suzanne, I think, had a problem with it, and they put her back in as president. But those are the only
That's
two
not
times I've
what
ever been
happened.
spoken.
But to this agenda item this evening, was there discussion with you specifically to take that role?
No, there wasn't.
Okay. Jamel?
I talked to you about it prior to any change of leadership regarding me going to policy instead of audit.
Correct.
And we talked previously, I think as a board, regarding the school board, I'm sorry, not school board, the student representative committee. And we talked about that openly.
At the working session.
Correct, yeah, a while ago. So I didn't give like a
And
specific
Mr.
call.
Beeler's not here this evening to say whether or not he was asked to be the policy chairperson, but I suppose you could answer that for us.
I did not ask him, I just assigned it.
But from a, I don't know, leadership perspective, wouldn't it be better to have conversations with people that are currently sitting in those positions and that can offer some experience and perspective to what's going?
I will take that into consideration, considering that I'm new to the role and I'm still in my first term. It was an oversight, and I apologize for that. So if someone would wish to have a conversation with me about the committees you've been assigned, I will take it under consideration, I will look at it, I will love to know what.
I appreciate that. I'm just, basing it off of Mr. Anderson's comment at the last meeting. We tabled the vote so that we can have a discussion, and then that did not take place. So I just don't know what happened, where the communication breakdown was.
Based on what I saw in the meeting, because I did watch the meeting minutes, it was tabled so that the president, the new incoming president, could look at the committee listing and come back with a new listing. So we're having a discussion tonight, so I think, I suggest that we move forward from this, and at least each of you, let's have a conversation about where you.
And I think we should table the vote.
Where you would like to go in that.
I think the concern, honestly, I don't disagree with you, Suzanne. I think it needs to have further discussion. But the problem with that is there's work that's not being done. So even from us not having taken this official board vote back in July, as policy chairperson, I had already set up meetings that have now not taken place. Goals meetings have not taken place. We're getting ready to discuss a capital project. Those meetings are not taking place. So
And visitation.
tabling the conversation and the vote to our next meeting, which off the top of my head, I'm not sure when that is, will delay those meetings from occurring again. So
17th is the next meeting.
That's
I won't be here for that special meeting that's being on the
I won't be
17th.
either.
So
I thought it was just a
I'm
brief
unable to
meeting
discuss it
to
at
approve
that meeting.
some financial items.
That's okay, we just need a quorum, right?
Well, I think, in fairness, we want a discussion, so we would hope
If-
that
if you-
everybody could be a part
If
of
you know
it.
you're not going to be there, I'd say in advance of that, it could be a phone discussion or something that takes place to get your input involved. And then when we have that quorum discussion, we'll decide at that time.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're tabling it till the second meeting of August?
No, not the second meeting. They just said for the 17th.
Isn't that the second meeting in August?
No, we have a
Yeah, it's the
regular
second- it's the
meeting.
next meeting.
Right, we had a regularly meeting scheduled for the end of August. The 17th is going to be a special meeting that's being added to the list.
Okay, so then the next meeting in August.
Right.
August, the end of August meeting is when this will be on the agenda?
No, he's saying the
No,
17th. That's what I'm trying to
But
clarify.
it can't be at a special meeting?
I don't think it can be, but the district clerk can verify that for us.
It can be on there if it's said in the announcement that that's why I meet.
Okay.
Sabbath time?
24th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the
So-
17th and 24th.
Do I have a motion to table that?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstained? Okay. Discussion regarding public comment? Nothing?
I don't understand what
What does that mean?
is the
Oh,
issue here?
that is a proposal that need a little bit more detail on there. Right now, the board allows people in the public venue to comment up to 30 minutes for 3 minutes per participant. The proposal is to have the policy committee look at, based on feedback from the community, looking at increasing that to 4 minutes, keeping within the 30-minute time frame. That would provide a little bit more latitude for public speakers to be heard and not necessarily feel as rushed off the platform. And again, it would be kept in the 30-minute time frame. So,
Can you share the feedback? I mean, feedback from, where's the feedback coming from? I haven't heard anything.
Feedback came from many people speaking.
Speaking
not
to the
having enough
board
time.
directly about,
So giving them, I mean, just math.
well, yeah, I mean,
3 minutes to 4 minutes,
grocery
it's a
store
33% increase in time.
aside. We haven't received anything officially from the community regarding public comment.
We've received lots of their feedback that couldn't be voiced in the time that they had.
I mean, on-the-spot feedback?
Yeah.
As they're standing up there?
Yeah. Can I just, I'll just remind everybody, one of the things that we had briefly discussed in this open forum, but we hadn't discussed it in a policy meeting, just because we haven't had an opportunity,
Yeah.
was we did discuss this proposal of adding a minute. However, the discussion was that while it kind of sounds good in theory that you're adding an extra minute, you would be allowing less speakers unless you added more time than the 30 minutes. Because now instead of 3 minutes per person for 30 minutes, it's 4 minutes per 30 minutes. So you would, in a sense, I'm making this up, taking away 1 or 2 people. So then the thought process was, as other districts sometimes do, we had started the discussion about having 2 public comments, which we could discuss timing, whether it's 15 minutes and 15 minutes to still keep with 30, or 30 and 30. And the process would be, which is typically done in other districts, is the first public comment of the meeting is based strictly on agenda items. So if you were to come and speak, you would only be able to speak on an agenda item. The second portion of the public comment, typically, again, we could set that discretion, but typically comes at the end of a meeting. So if, for instance, a taxpayer wanted to get up and talk about something that was absolutely not on the agenda tonight, that would be their opportunity to do that. And we just never finished having that discussion. So it's on the agenda list, but
Right.
I don't know where it's going to go at this point.
The thought of going to 4 minutes wasn't to minimize the amount of people that would be talking, but rather to just take in consideration that we usually never have about 6 people talking. And it's not saying it's never going to happen, a couple times.
Right.
Soccer.
Yeah, a couple.
Soccer. I'm just gonna
I still like. the
Remind
3
everyone of
minutes
soccer.
Limit. I would be more apt to actually increase the time that's allowed for public comment. As to the option of having it in 2 separate places, I never want to make somebody feel that their item, even though it does not appear on the agenda, is any less valid than something that is current and in front of us. I would say, bump it up for another 10 minutes and still limit people to 3 minutes. Be concise, be passionate. I encourage people to speak up. But I want to give everybody an opportunity to be heard, no
That's
matter
fair.
what is on their mind.
Because I think there's a perception that we're trying to cut them off because we don't want to hear them, which is not
Agreed,
the
which
case.
was,
Right.
right, which was why we
Right.
thought that perhaps
Right.
instead of adding any extra time, we would, I looked to other districts to see what other districts do.
Yeah.
And the majority of other districts, I know from even where Ms. Clark just came from, I believe that's how they do it. There's 2 separate times that people can speak. And I don't disagree with you, Dan, but I think also that there's a pro to that, like I asked a couple of the other presidents at the time, is it gives those parents the opportunity that, we have a sign up. So you have to be here to sign up 10 minutes prior if you want to speak on an item at all now. In this situation, it gives a little bit more flexibility to those families that work, that perhaps they can't get to the meeting until 7 o'clock. We could allow, again, it's a discussion for everybody, that you would say there would be a second sign-up sheet, for instance, that you would have until 7 p.m. to sign up for whatever comments you wanted. I mean, again, it's based off of what other districts do. It doesn't have to be cookie cutter. It's just something that we were attempting to discuss but never finished.
Or we could move the public comment to a different portion of the meeting, rather than having it earlier in the agenda, put it somewhere in the middle, is there any requirement as to when it is, or the consistency of
Not
public
based on what I
comment?
understand.
So, depending on, sometimes we have meetings that are rather long, it would be more towards the beginning, still allowing people to get there who might be at work or, have kids at home, getting them,
You mean towards the end?
Well, like if it's like a 3-hour meeting, I don't think having it at the end is what parents want. Have
If
it
they have it at the beginning, to your point, you're saying they,
based on the length of the meeting, figuring out where it best fits in. So if you know it's going to be a long meeting, say, we're going to put it, a third of the way down.
Yeah.
If we know it's going to be one of these super quick 60-minute in and out meetings that happen all so often, we could put it at the end and have it right before, comments
We
from
have
the
flexibility, it's my understanding, to move it in the agenda, so that,
board. So that might be something else to evaluate in terms of putting it where it seems appropriate to maximize the public participation without making the public sit here for a unreasonable amount of time in their minds.
I think the biggest concern that, again, has come up in meetings that I've attended with that is it falls on our district clerk to verify those speakers. You always hope for better days, but unfortunately, we have had a couple of speakers this year that slipped through the cracks, that because they hand in their paperwork literally at 6 p.m., we had found out afterwards that they're not even district residents. So that is a potential issue as well, that it doesn't allow for the district clerk to vet the document. When you fill that document out, you're giving your name, you're giving your address. If we had a suspicion that you weren't a district resident, the district clerk would have the opportunity to investigate that. By doing it halfway through the meeting, again, it's just logistically, she's going to get up, she's going to get the paper, she's going to now sit there and check through it, and also follow along for the meeting. I just don't know that that's feasible, to put on her to do as well.
Didn't we have an issue with somebody who wanted to speak who was not a resident at one
Yes,
point in
and
time? I
typically
thought,
we don't allow it.
I know, but it's not prohibited. I mean,
No, it is, we have policy on it.
With policy that.
Yes. But unfortunately, like I said, we've recently discovered that we did allow somebody to speak, but I did not realize that they were not a resident until after the fact that it was brought to my attention, and, Lisa and I didn't pick up on it. So,
I think we usually have people, if they're moved to come and speak, I don't think it's going to matter so much that we have to make it later in the meeting or not. They're going to come early and abide by the rules that we have had in place for a long time. I mean, I'd personally be open to extending it 3 to 4 minutes, and if you happen to have a topic that night that we're getting 8, 9, 10 people, then I'd be open to extending the total time, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Otherwise, it's not really going to be that big an issue. If we only have 5 people and we give them 4 minutes each, typically I think that would be enough. And then on those occasions when it's not, we deal with that with some flexibility on the total
I
time.
mean, I think we've had a
That's the
handful of
simplest
meetings
way.
where we had.
We did that.
overly
Yeah,
large-
hockey.
The hockey meeting was the one that comes to mind.
Right.
because the-
Luckily, that was
You
before.
were
Sorry,
tearing
Oh, yeah, John took off for that one, so.
Yeah. I mean, that's the easiest way, and it puts the least burden
Right, you got
on.
that.
And is there, with regards to signing up, does it need to be done in person, on-site day of meeting prior to? Or could we have a time cutoff where they would have to submit their request along with their, home address by, let's say, 3 PM?
It depends on the policy as it reads, so we would have to take a look at the
Okay.
policy and just see how
'Cause then
how it reads.
that might eliminate the need to verify our residency of each of the speakers.
COVID helped with that though too, because
Yes.
with COVID,
You
we had to find out who was gonna be in the building. So we had people telling us that they were coming, whether to speak. Some people still do that, not all, but occasionally we'll get people that will mail the form ahead of time.
Right, to say I'm coming to speak,
Yeah.
true. But they don't have to do that anymore.
They don't have to anymore,
Right.
correct?
But that could be
Make it
one of the
online
first.
with attach a photo, your copy of your ID, something like that.
You laugh, but can we do that?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
What we can do.
Mark, I was like,
I don't
oh,
think
no.
we can.
No, nothing online?
No, not with your ID.
PII collection.
yeah, you can't have the driver's license.
Let's stay away from that.
He was
Is there
very,
an online
he was
form
very
to
adamant
sign
with his
up?
head shake.
Or is that,
So that's different than collecting the photo IDs. Like, we shouldn't be in the business of collecting people's photo IDs.
Yes,
Even showing their IDs is no good?
Showing is different. No, we're talking about
collecting an image.
collecting and
So-
who will have the access. That's a
so
whole different
if it
ballgame.
allowed and if it was the way people wanted to go, we could make it a digital sign up where there was, a form, you filled it out, and at a certain time, it was cut off.
People
The
were able to
form,
submit the
yes.
form.
But our current policy, 3220, does not state that you need to be a district resident. Our form for sign-up, so where is that district resident piece coming from? Because the policy itself does not.
It might be on the form then.
But then that's not backed up by policy.
Okay,
So that needs to be addressed.
yeah. It might be that I'm thinking of it from the paperwork.
I looked through
form.
everything. It's only on that intake, the form that they fill out if they want to speak. So we can't
Well, I think
enforce
that's the
something
first-
that's not.
Right, that's the first thing that the policy committee should look at, is
I'm not on
that valid?
And then also a time limit ahead
Yeah.
of time to register.
Yeah. We'll take a look at that.
So, based on the discussion, does anyone want to make a proposal to change the public speaking?
I prefer with.
You want me to throw mine out there?
Yeah.
Whoever wants to make a proposal.
I like Anthony's suggestion, which is what we've done this year, that if we get 10 speakers that come up to the podium, we can decide collectively as a board to extend the public comment to 45 minutes, still 3 minutes, and we extend it instead of a half hour, we give the leeway to allow for 45 minutes of public comment, and then otherwise, I think we keep it as is.
I just don't know if that solves the problem that we're hearing now regarding people that are talking, needing more time. I understand 10 people being, let's say, a maximum, but, I mean, I've only been on for a year. I haven't seen 10 people go up. So let's say, on average, I mean, tonight's the summertime, so it doesn't really count, but let's say during the school year, 2 or 3, maybe 4, if there's a real topic that people want to speak to. I just haven't seen that many, so you guys maybe have seen them happen more often that you want to plan for?
It depends.
Yeah.
It depends. I think the hockey situation was hours that we.
I don't know if it was.
It
But it was pretty long.
It was a very long evening.
It was hours.
Dan, it was a very long evening.
Who
And
do
Dan
you want
was
me to
running
cut off,
that
the
meeting.
veteran or the guy who's recovering from cancer? Which
No,
should
you're
I have
in
said
charge. I'm
thanks,
not-
goodbye?
No, not at all. You can't.
No, I want to
Period.
hear, you hate me, love me, whatever, just
I-
I
What were you
say it all.
suggesting, though? I wasn't catching, are you saying a longer per-person time limit?
Yeah, just because,
at
and
least
and
the
I'm okay with the
More than
flexible.
3 to 4 minutes, you're saying?
4 minutes is, to me, that's a 33% increase in time. Let's start there.
So that's
See if that-
what Stacy was saying.
No,
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 no, I'm saying keep it at 3 minutes,
Oh,
and if
keep it
we
at
have
3.
10 speakers, you extend the public comment past 30 minutes to 45 minutes, which accommodates more speakers. I don't know, we've maybe had one or two
How
speakers
about a
this year
median?
that needed more than 3 minutes, and if I'm not mistaken, unless they were being disrespectful, they were allowed more time.
I will say that,
most of
just
the time.
in observation, most people went to the bell.
Correct.
So if they had an extra minute, would they have spoken longer? It's
Yeah.
highly likely.
Everybody does that,
No, go to 5 minutes.
right.
That's why I would say give it up to 4 minutes, still keeping the 30-minute time limit, but being flexible like we were.
We
during the
could
year.
put in
You-
policy a 30 to 45-minute time window
sliding
that the
scale.
board can vote to go over the 30 minutes. Policy committee would just need to look at that.
Okay, so we would vote each night. If we needed to go over that, we would take a vote to.
We would take a
either
vote at
extend.
that point if we
Right.
saw there were
And then
multiple people.
flexibility
If there
in
was
the
a need.
agenda.
If there was a
There was
need.
need,
Right.
right.
To provide
Flexibility.
flexibility to the public.
I think certain times the public may want that additional time because it's going to be, might be a hot topic going on that we want to hear
Well, we
about.
have budget, some.
Or budget, yes.
Voting coming up in
Right.
December. We have the, BOCES situation, so.
Silly thing to add in, a countdown clock? It
A
sounds.
big one behind us.
You don't need it huge, but they make, so, I mean, sometimes people are up there and they're speaking and,
don't know.
They don't know, the phone goes off to ring, to end the time, they might not hear it, they might think somebody's phone's just going off in the audience. Maybe something visual for the speaker where they could say, all right, I'm down to like my last 30 seconds, I better wrap stuff
Yeah,
up.
we could do that like they do for proctoring now.
I had that
They
as
have
an
the
agenda item
countdown
to discuss with
Right.
the
On
new
the
district
computer, and
clerk.
it shows on the smart boards.
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
s-
available
I didn't think
in board
something
docs.
so large and.
Well,
and-
it's
but-
just a
but-
countdown clock.
No, I didn't want to be
makes sense.
obnoxiously large,
Ms.
but-
Clark can speak to it because they use it in Middletown, where she was previously employed. It is a countdown clock that is accessible in board docs. We already have it. We don't have to buy anything. It just gets projected on the screen behind you. And they use it for the public comment, and then they actually use it for the board board and cabinet at the end of the evening as well. The clock is displayed, and when your time is up, you're done speaking. So it's available in board docs. Bargoff isn't here, but I'm pretty sure that it is.
I request a motion to extend my time.
The Hassler provision.
Bargoff, I think the question was,
that could be a
we had
problem.
discussed previously, but we were waiting to have a new district clerk in here, and so that we were tabling the conversation, but that within board docs, there is the function of having a countdown clock
Yes.
that we can display.
Absolutely, we can
Right.
display that on that, and
Yeah, that's not an added
it's a
cost.
fairly
Right.
easier feature.
I have a comment to Mr. Siriello. You mentioned perhaps changing the policy to read 30 to 45 minutes, but I mean, it does state that it can be extended by a vote of the board, so I think that that's open
Covers it.
enough, right?
As long as it's
It's in
spelled
there.
out in there. Okay, can I have a formal proposal then for this change?
All right, so maybe I can just quickly
Sum it
summarize.
up.
Yeah. So if you're saying we already have we can already
We have
vote
flexibility.
each night, we can, during each meeting?
As
It
needed,
says the period may
needed.
be extended by a majority vote of the board.
if needed.
The 30-minute period may be extended by a majority vote of the board.
All right, so we'll keep that. Propose to increase time from 3 minutes to 4 minutes, and also introduce I keep saying shot-down clock, but a countdown clock as a part of the session.
Do I have a second for the motion?
Second.
Anthony? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Okay, number 12, reports by Board of Education committees. This is another discussion item to throw out to the board. Based on my time on the board and comments made by some other board members over time, especially new board members coming onto the board, this can sometimes put people on the spot. And in order to streamline the meeting, a thought was to have the superintendent and the president of the board just do a summary at the end of the night,
Are we talking about the same thing?
going around the table.
Well, that's not
That's
the
not what this
agenda
is.
item.
This
This
is
agenda
reports on
item is for
committees.
Board of Education committee
Policy committee,
updates.
facilities committee.
Committee updates.
That's.
Updates from the chairs of the
This
committees.
is going to be the committee reports that everybody shares with.
Visitation, facilities.
You're talking about the last piece on the end here. It's a discussion here, so we're
What
not
does
there.
that say?
This is reports by board, the committees. This is different.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right.
Okay.
So we can get rid of Board of Committee reports.
So that's really the committees. The only-
Reports by Board of Education committees, please.
There's no update
I had
on the
nothing, oh, I'm
visitation.
sorry.
You want to start here?
I had nothing for policy because I was no longer the chairperson, so no meetings took place.
And for visitation, I have not planned any of the meetings because it requires a lot of different coordinating with building principals and staff, so that has not been done for the upcoming school year. Other than that, I have no update.
Dawn's not here.
Okay, I'm going 13.
Okay. Report by student representative. Jenna Rowan Delson, welcome.
Thank you. So first, I just wanted to say how thankful I am to be here and how excited I am to get to work this upcoming school year. This summer, I've had the opportunity to grow as a leader and representative by attending Empire Girls State, which teaches young women across New York how to become better leaders and citizens. And I've recently started my second term serving on the New York State Governor's Youth Council, learning how to better represent the young people in our community. And I'm really excited to use what I've learned in my role as student representative this year. My main goal for this year is to ensure that as student representative, I am representing all student voices in the district. I want to make certain that I'm representing students with all different backgrounds that make up our community, and that I'm not just focusing on my peers in the high school, but students from elementary and middle schools as well. I look forward to getting to meet with administrators from all the schools in the district and meeting with students from kindergarten all the way up to senior year. After much thought, I decided I would like my focus initiative topic to be mental health, because this is something that affects every student in our district. And as we head into school in a more post-COVID world, this is a really big adjustment for many kids. As student representative, I hope to help them through their education journey and provide as much support as possible. So I hope to get students' opinions and concerns in the upcoming weeks, and I look forward to getting started. Thank you.
Great job.
Welcome.
Great job.
Welcome.
We're excited to have you, Jenna.
Next up, we have personnel. Matt?
Good evening. I respectfully request approval for the items listed under personnel.
Motion? Second?
Dan Anthony, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And if I may, just for 2 seconds, there are a number of things on the items of personnel. First of all, we have a number of staff appointments, particularly new certified appointments. And I just want to point out at least one of them. Well, 2 of them, 3 of them, actually. We have our new district-wide mentor program coordinators, and that they are Michelle Pereira and Casey Capeman, who are going to be helping to spearhead the mentoring experience for all of our teachers. That's a big job, but you'll be great at it. We also have Lori Hawk, who you just approved to be the next Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. So congratulations. I look forward to giving you the seat. Thank you very much.
We're going to need a bigger table.
No, we're going to get smaller seats.
Camera can't fit.
No, can't.
Next up, we have business and financial. Patrick?
Yeah, thank you. I would respectfully request the approval of the items listed under the business and financial section of the agenda.
Motion?
Second.
Jamel, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Number 16, Committees on Special Education and Preschool. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion?
Second?
Suzanne? And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Reports by Board and Central Office. It says discussion regarding reports by Board and Central Office. That's what I prematurely started speaking to before. It has put people on the spot, and most times things are repeated when we go around the room. So I thought I would throw it out for a discussion about the possibility of having the superintendent and the president just provide a summary update to not have everyone be on the spot at the end of the meeting. It would shorten the meeting, but it would also cover everything without a duplication. So I want to throw it out for.
Well, couldn't it just be a question, do you want to speak? Do you have anything you want to speak about versus you need to speak? I mean, I'm very against that. I feel like as an elected official, I'm very connected to the community, and I want to let them know what's going on and that we're involved with students and staff. And
I'm the complete opposite. I find a lot of it to be repetitive. It adds a decent amount of time to the meeting. If you wanted to cut it down to one thing you did this month kind of thing, but it's a lot of the same thing from the same people over and over, and then, you'll have, good old Doc Hassler list 40 things that he did, and then Elsie will be cut off with 20 of them or whatever. So, I've always been in favor of eliminating it. If you wanted to streamline it, I would also be very much interested in that.
I think if you wanted to put maybe a time limit on it, sorry, Dr. Hester. I agree with Dawn, because in all honesty, there are a lot of things in this district that I don't have the opportunity to attend, and hearing about it from the rest of you, from my fellow board members, enlightens me, and it gives me a perspective on things that are going on in the district that I may not have been aware of. And I think that serves for the public as well, because there may be things going on that they're not aware of.
I agree. I don't want to get rid of it. I think if you don't want to say anything, you just say, have a good night. But I don't think that we should get rid of it. I would have no problem with putting a time limit on it. Again, I know other districts that do the same thing. You could put the time up on the board. You get your 3 minutes, just like now 4 minutes, just like the public commenters.
4 minutes?
And we'll go on.
That seems a bit
Oh,
long.
well, we're giving 4 minutes to the public, so.
I know, but they're the public.
Wow.
We got, how many people sitting at this table? 15?
Got
That's
it.
another hour. I don't know if the audience.
Maybe 2 minutes?
First of all, I
I
doubt
was thinking
most
30
of
seconds.
us would speak for 4 minutes. Even myself, who
I've
speaks
heard
quite a
Hessler
bit,
speak
I don't
for
think I've ever
5.
spoken for 4 minutes. But I'm not opposed to the time limit, but I do not want to get rid of it.
Sorry, Eric.
I'll speak for as long or as short as you want me to speak.
I think a lot of it is,
I'd be open to the question idea that you said, and then also add in a time limit, like a.
can that be like situational, like see how it goes? I mean, I think just to limit people initially is a little, I mean, other than
I feel bad for him now. Can we stop looking at him?
I don't think.
Usually it's things that I'm asked to talk about.
It's not to limit anybody explicitly. It's really, because sometimes people feel on the spot, they have to come up with something, they feel
Just
like
say
if they don't.
goodnight.
But if.
The cabinet too,
And that's
or you
part of
mean-
the conversation, so if someone wanted to say pass, or that would be
Just have
acceptable.
a nice evening.
Yeah.
And I
That's
don't think
fine.
you're
But
putting
again,
anybody
that's
on the
why we're
spot.
having
It's on
the
the agenda. So it's on the agenda, so
I
I'm
think the
sure
only one
Dr.
we put on the
Hassler has
spot was
prepared what
Sergey,
he's
'cause
saying.
it was his first night, and his turn to go first. So Sergey was on the spot, but
Okay. Is there a proposal for anything, or to leave it as is?
leave it as is.
I would propose what Dawn said, and make it optional, and make you maybe ask the question, does anyone have anything they want to speak about? And then I would go further and put a limit of 2 minutes, but I'm also going to be flexible. I don't want to stand here and say, and I'm talking.
But do you mean just,
I'll practice in advance, I promise.
are we speaking about just trustees, or is it the cabinet members as well? Because I think a lot of what they say is clarification for the community and points that were made, and I think a lot of what they say in those closing remarks is, speaks to a lot of the recognition of our students and conferences that they attend, and like, where else would the community get that information?
Well, that's part of the discussion, so what does the cabinet think?
But do we know if the community
Except
is
Eric.
even doing it? I mean, are there any metrics on the YouTube
mean,
video that could determine the number of people who are
Can they do a
watching?
like when someone's talking?
I don't know. I know Google Classroom tracks a lot more stuff. I mean, I understand what you're saying to alert the community, but the question lies, is the community watching?
But that's not our role. We still have to provide it, whether they avail themselves of what
They have the
they need
ability to
they
watch.
can listen to. It doesn't negate us from what we should be doing, in my opinion.
Dawn, I do agree with you regarding, I think there's a separation between us and them. I do appreciate their
I mean, yes
reports.
and no.
They're very summarized, and, they're very tactical. And we're not with them every day, so when they do that summary, I do appreciate it.
But I think that there's a lot of value in what the trustees say as well. I mean, some of it may be repetitive, but maybe it's something that, specifically that a trustee says that wouldn't, that would resonate with some of the community, and I
I
just
think the
it's-
piece that gets missed is, and especially during COVID, our parents don't have access to the classrooms. So when we hear about certain programs that we get invited as board trustees to go into these classrooms, to go to buildings, to visit with principals, to visit with students, to visit with teachers, it gives us the opportunity to come back and report on that to the parents and the taxpayers, and it validates what we are asking them to help support. So it's easy for us to sit here and say, well, let's not discuss it at all. But to Dawn's point, how will the taxpayer know some of the great stuff that's going on? And I got to be honest with you, that's one of the only reasons I sit here. It's certainly not for any
Well,
of this
and
nonsense.
just as a parent,
It's for the
too. I
students.
mean, the taxpayer, yeah.
So-
As a parent, you want to know that the district is invested in.
Exactly. So
then-
I'm not in favor of getting rid of it.
So then maybe a proposal where only if you need to say something, will you say something?
Well, I thought that
Raise
we'd
your
still
hand.
do a roll call, and then if, Suzanne doesn't want to say anything, she just says, have a good night. I don't think it should be, I want to say something.
No, you just say, have a nice evening, or
That's what we're talking about, I guess, regarding it being repetitive.
And then Eric can get those extra 4 minutes.
And then we'll give Eric part two.
we'll each give Eric some
Not
of our
allowed
time.
to secede your time to
love
another
it.
speaker.
He'll be the only one with the timer.
The timer goes up.
All right, so based on what I hear, I don't necessarily hear a consensus to change unless someone wants to make a proposal and have the board vote on it. So
Who made the proposal to discuss it tonight?
I made the proposal to discuss it, to bring up what the concerns were. So, but we've now had different conversations, so if someone wants to propose a change, then they can, or we leave it as is. It's a discussion.
I would make the proposal that, based on what Dawn said, that you would put it out there. Does anyone have anything they want to add? That would be my proposal.
Does anyone second it?
Instead of going around the room in order,
Correct.
Again, is that exclusive of the cabinet or inclusive? Do they have the option?
Everyone seated at the
Do
table.
they have a?
But they have the option to-
Because once again, I appreciate,
Well, I don't think that that's up to us. I mean, isn't that
That's what I'm
the superintendent's decision whether you want your cabinet to speak at a board meeting?
They are more than welcome to speak at a board meeting if they so choose.
Do they get a choice? At the end, we're going to go,
Well, my proposal is saying, do you have if anyone has something they want to say, say
But
it.
then do
Right,
we
is that
go
for the nine of us, or is that
like
for the whole
haphazard
table?
or
For everybody.
Oh, okay,
around the
table.
room or?
Okay.
I mean, okay, so
All right.
that sounds.
Seems a little
like it's
clumsy. It
chaotic.
sounds clumsy.
That sounds
Start on one
clumsy.
end, work our way to the.
Why would it
Which
sound
is what we're
clumsy?
doing
You just
anyway.
Raise your hand and say, I wanted to
But I
talk.
mean, you say, how many people have to say something? Let's say 6 people around the table do, start on one end and work our way through the people that actually have to say
But
something.
what are we looking to do? Reduce the time spent on that, is that the,
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
I'll make a recommendation that we leave it for now and we revisit it again at another
Agreed.
day if everyone's comfortable with that.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, you asked for a proposal, I gave you a proposal,
did.
and you didn't
I-
put it to a vote, but that's
I'm
okay.
sorry, I can put it to a vote because you did have a second. I should have put it to a vote. So can I have a vote, please? All in favor of Anthony's proposal?
To be summarized, sorry, one more time.
what is Anthony's proposal? Sorry.
Anthony's proposal was to match what Dawn had proposed.
Oh, so he's matching my proposal? That's his proposal?
Is to
Well, I like
ask
your idea.
what, if anyone
Redundant.
had
Talk
anything they
about
would like to
redundant?
speak on. And Jamel seconded.
Yeah.
I say yes.
Yes.
Say yes.
Yes.
Suzanne? No? Dawn?
No.
Okay. The motion passes.
So just to be clear, if we have something to say, we're still saying it, with no time clock.
For now, yes. We haven't decided on a time clock. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Jamel? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.